do it live.
Okay. No.
We'll do it live. F it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
What is up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Nintendo Talk Live. I am Bobby, the Nintendo Guru. I gotta fix you, Jesse. You're like massive right now in my thing, but that's me. I gotta just fix your. Holy crap! What did I do here? I did something with the. There we go. Now we're getting a little bit better. All you saw was like your face. Oh, okay. There we go. Okay, so. Welcome to another episode of Nintendo Talk Live. I am Bobby, the Nintendo Guru, joined by the famous GameOverJesse. How you doing, Jesse?
I don't know if I would call myself famous, but thank you.
Thank you. You'd be surprised. You would be very surprised, sir. Today I told a guy I was doing a podcast. I did one of my podcasts earlier today, and the guy that I had on as to fill in for my other host was just like, dude. You got GameOverJesse coming on tonight? I'm like, yeah, man. He goes, holy crap, dude, that's like amazing. So he's like, his name is Joseph Moran. He has a YouTube channel called Bad Bit Games, and he's just like, dude, please tell Jesse I love his work and all that stuff. And I was like, I'll pass the message. I'm like, stop fangirling over here. Like, this is nuts.
That's really, really awesome. Yeah. Glad to hear someone appreciates the videos.
There's a lot of people out there appreciate videos. You know that. Don't play shy. All right. So for those the very small minority that don't know who you are, hey, tell everybody like what you do and all that good stuff.
All right, on my channel, youtube.com/GameOverJesse. Started out with just Zelda theories, news about Zelda Wii U, as it was known at the time.
Mm-hmm.
That obviously turned out to be Breath of the Wild. That released, and all of the hype kind of died down a little bit about Zelda, so I've been trying to focus on other Nintendo and even games outside of Nintendo to have a wider variety of stuff and content on my channel. So I've been doing a lot of top 10 lists, videos on canceled or unreleased games, stuff like that, which have turned out to be even more popular than the Zelda theory videos that I started out doing. So
yeah, but anytime you can get into stuff where people are talking about like, hey, you know, this died for whatever reason, and to, you know, this game was in production and just died, or things like that nature. People, I think, get really hyped about that because they just like to know all the details on that stuff. So I think, yeah, that's definitely a phenomenal idea and series that you're doing and such. I apologize for those. Jesse and I were watching the Nintendo World Championships prior to this. I actually turned it on my phone just to see, because I want to see the last game that they're going to play.
I'm hoping it's something unannounced.
That's like, what I'm hoping too, because typically that's why they do it. So,
yeah, the last Nintendo World Championships, they announced the Metroid game for the 3DS. Yes. Nobody really wanted.
Yeah, exactly. They're playing Odyssey. They're playing Odyssey in the final one. So I don't know what they're going to do for that. But anyway, John Numbers, we were saying prior to this, is like he's probably going to be the champion again. Like this kid,
two-time champion, back-to-back World Nintendo champion.
He's crazy, dude. They did that Super Mario Maker level. He blew through it, man. I'm like. Yeah. It was like he'd been playing it for like weeks and knew exactly where to go. Like, that dude is just unreal.
I'm not too caught up on everything that he's done. I know he has his own following on YouTube or Twitch or whatever, and I assume because Super Mario Maker was such a huge part of the first World Championships, plus the game was already really big on its own, I assume he has played enough of it.
Yeah.
That he just understands, like he can just see something in his peripheral vision and be like, okay, I need to duck whenever I jump at this point or whatever. So.
Word is that he was when they basically the first time last year or in 2015 when they did the championships, the rumor was he was like a Mario speedrunner. So this is just, you know what I mean, like he was at such an advantage going against these guys. It wasn't even fun. Like it was like Neo in the Matrix. Just he was flying through the whole thing. They are playing Super Mario Odyssey. First person to touch a moon to the top of the tower wins. You have to win like 5 of those or whatever. It's crazy. Oh, they're doing different challenges. So there's a bunch of different challenges, but whatever. He's probably going to win. I just got to play it in the background just so I can see who wins it.
Yeah, like that's really awesome if he does win. I don't have anything against him. Like I said, I don't really know who he is.
Yeah.
But I would just love for someone else to be on stage, like winning, and it not be the same person back to back.
Well, I like the fact that he's in the finals. So if this kid beats him, that makes it even better. Like, here's an underdog thing, because he's definitely the favorite to win. You know what I mean? Like, it just blew me away. Like, and I like how they did this, like with the underground and the overworld and stuff. And like when you lost, you dropped into this underground, and you would kind of like go against people and such. And like it was like a round robin. I don't want to say round robin, but it was like a loser's bracket, so to speak. So you had to keep pushing your way through. I liked how they did that. It was really cool. So
yeah, I really liked it too, because even if you are really great at a game or you're really professional, like with Mario Kart, all it takes is like one hit from a red shell. Yep. Everyone's done it where they've been in first place, get hit by something, and then everyone passes them at the very end.
Yep.
So one slip up, whether it's your fault or not, if it happens, you still get that second chance to come out on top. So I really like it.
Exactly. They're I don't want to watch this because they're showing Mario Odyssey stuff, and I don't want to see that stuff. So I shut it off. I'm done. I'll see. Yeah. I'm sure in the chat, if you guys are watching as well, you guys can let us know who wins. But whatever. So earlier on, you said that you started doing everything with, the Breath of the Wild stuff, and that's where I picked up on you, because just out of nowhere, one day I'm just like, I'm seeing all this stuff, this GameOverJesse guy, and I'm like, dude, where is he getting all this information and stuff? And he's just like, you were pulling stuff like crazy, like all these theories and all these videos, and like showing in-depth stuff, and like you were breaking down footage, like you were no knocks, no insults or anything, but like you were the poor man's Game Explained. Like you would take this stuff and just like break down the footage in a way that people just fell in love with, and that's where I picked up on you, and I was like, this is pretty awesome and such. So, but what got you into YouTube? Where did that all come from?
It may be a bit controversial. There's a few people that I've talked to about it, but I started my YouTube channel a really long time ago. It was just for my music that I was recording, putting up. No one really cared about it. I had like 100 subscribers after like 2 years. But I wrote for ZeldaDungeon.net 5 years ago, probably around the release of Skyward Sword.
Okay.
Because at that time, Skyward Sword was about to come out. Everyone was just referring to it as Zelda Wii, in the same way that they referred to Breath of the Wild as Zelda Wii U. Yeah. And there was a YouTube channel called Earthbounding64 that would just post every single rumor, piece of news, anything that would come out. They would just post it, talk about it. And I always liked that, and it inspired me to start doing something, and where I was constantly looking up stuff about Skyward Sword at the time, I came across Zelda Dungeon's website, and I started writing for them. I was put, for a very brief time, I was put in charge of their news team. So I was the person that was in charge of like scheduling all the news and training other people. And I wrote for them for about 2 years, and then I started dating this girl, so all that got pushed to the side because it wasn't a quote real job. And then after we broke up, which we dated for about 3 years. Sorry if this is going on.
No, this is good, man.
But I'll get to the controversial part.
It's fine. Go ahead. We got plenty of time. We're good.
So we broke up after like 3 years. I wanted to go back to the Zelda community because I really liked talking to not just the people that worked on the websites, but people that were actually fans of the website. I really loved that back and forth, because in real life, I don't really know anyone except like one person that's as big of a Zelda fan as I am. Yeah. So it was really nice to have that back and forth with a lot of people. And then whenever I went back to writing, I started writing for Zelda Universe at the time. And I became friends with a lot of people there. And then their news editor, who was the person that was in charge of their news team, he was on break or something for a few months whenever I started writing. And when he came back, it was like all of a sudden everything that I was writing wasn't being published, or it wasn't good enough. And one of the things that I wrote that really pushed me along the path of being like, well, if I'm writing all this stuff that I like and it's not being published here, maybe I can turn these articles into scripts and then publish them as actual videos. And the article that caused it was, as Mario Maker, we were talking about it earlier, they just got done playing it on Nintendo World Championships. But when Mario Maker was coming out, and around that time, everybody was like, oh, this would be really awesome if they did this with another franchise. And obviously, Zelda was a very popular choice if they were like, oh, they should have a create your own dungeon thing. Yep. But a long time ago, when The Legend of Zelda was first made for the Famicom disk system, Miyamoto had the idea to let you create your own dungeons and save them on the floppy disk drive. And then you could take those to your friends. And I'm not sure on the exact reason, but I think it was he felt that if a player-created dungeon was too hard for their friend to play, and it was someone was coming in and their friend was like, hey, I just made this dungeon, play it. If they played through it and it was too hard, then it would deter them from playing the actual game. So he thought it would be better. It kind of like how Super Mario Brothers 2, the Japanese version, rumor is they thought it was too hard for American players.
Absolutely.
So it was basically the same concept, where he thought it would be too hard and people wouldn't want to play the actual game. So he just cut it out, and then we had the base game. And I wrote an article about that, the cut feature or whatever, saying, hey, you know, everyone wants Zelda Dungeon Maker or whatever. Fun fact, Nintendo already made that. They just didn't release it. The editor, the person that was in charge of Zelda Dungeon, never posted it or anything, and a week later, IGN, on their Nintendo voice chat, which is one of my favorite Nintendo podcasts, they were talking about the exact same thing that I'd written about. And one day there was an article that popped up on Zelda Universe that was basically talking about what IGN had talked about. So the editor, instead of wanting to have an original piece of content before anyone else, ended up having like a secondhand source piece of content that was just promoting another website. And after that, I was like, okay, well, if this is how it's going to be, then I'm just going to, like, everything that I would write that I thought would be good enough, I'll just take it, put it on my own YouTube channel, and now I have hopefully getting close to 50,000 subscribers soon.
Good God. So, real quick, I just want to, the chat is, I just want to acknowledge some of the people in the chat. So, Sparv, what is up? John Thomas, the gamer, happy birthday, man. I saw that pop up earlier. I just want to tell you, yesterday was your birthday. Happy birthday, man. Matthew Knight, hello, sir. John, we're Twin Game Reviews, hello. Chibi is here. I love you, Chibi. Nintalk is here. What's up, Patrick? Okay, so I mean that's an ingenious idea. I mean that's forethought I feel in your mind or on your side, because if you're getting beat up and how long ago was this? Like a year ago, 2 years ago?
Whenever Mario Maker was
so
just
that's a couple
released.
years ago. So but to think that like, hey, because it still was in my mind the emergence of everything. Like, now everybody's doing YouTube and doing all this stuff as it is. Like, the competition is crazy now. But at that point, like, you leaving what you were doing, because it was all written stuff at that time. The video content really wasn't huge. It was starting to become, but it was a few people in the very beginning that was getting it to push and go. So I tipped my cap that you were like, you looked at it and you were like, hey, you know what, I'm going to go this way with it. And you went. That was pretty cool. So you started approximately 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, whatever it was, and in that time, that's where you've amassed the 45. Because you just hit 45,000 this week, right?
Yeah, I was very, very excited about that.
Congratulations!
Thank you.
I just hit 1,000, and I thought that was wonderful. 45,000, I would be like sweating like the whole time, like that's because that's got to be. Do you ever hit that point where you're just like, what's next? Like, how do I keep my finger on the pulse and keep pushing forward? It's
been really hard lately because I almost every video that I post doesn't even get 10% of the amount of views as the subscribers that I have. Mm-hmm. So a typical video that I post, unless it does really great, will get around 1,000 or 2,000 views, which is still really good. Mm-hmm. Around the time Breath of the Wild was coming out, every single video that I posted would easily get over 10,000 in the first day. So that's how big of a difference like the release hype of Breath of the Wild's been with, like, you know, a few months out, everyone's played it, they've moved on to whatever else is coming out. Yeah. So it's been very difficult in that way, because I keep trying to think of, okay, what kind of video can I make to get these people interested, because they mostly subscribed for the Breath of the Wild news. Yeah. Breath of the Wild's already out. The only news that you can talk about is the DLC coming out later this year. Yeah. So that's why I've been trying so many different things, basically looking at the YouTube channels that I like, which I like discussion podcast style videos like this, where people get into in-depth conversations. Yeah. I like the canceled unreleased games. My friend Andrew, who runs the Yuri of Wind channel, that's where that came from. The top, what was it? Instead of focusing on one single video, I made sort of a list. So instead of talking about whatever the one specific game was, it's the top 5 canceled Mario games or top 5 canceled Zelda games. And they ended up becoming some of my most popular videos. And after a while, you just run out of those canceled games to talk.
Yeah, it gets a little rough at some point.
Yeah.
That's sometimes, you know, when I started, I had another channel, and I went and I was doing my thing, and then it starts to hit this rut a little bit, where it's just like you don't know. It's weird when things are exploding. Like when I really got my push was during the amiibo craze, and I was doing amiibo hunts, and like every video, like you said, like every video I did was just skyrocketing. The next one was doing better than the next, and then all of a sudden it was like, boop, done, flatline, and I was like, what do I do? Like, and at that point, the problem starts to become, you focus so much on that now you don't know where to go, because you've kind of lost your way. And when I started, because my original channel was the Geek Guru, and I was doing comic book stuff and movie stuff and all that stuff, and you would think that it would be like, well, no big deal, you just fall back on that stuff. But I had been away from it for so long, I kind of lost my way, and I didn't know where to go. And I kind of fell in love with doing the Amiibo Nintendo stuff. And I was like, I don't want to go back to that other stuff, because that stuff wasn't getting me anything. You know what I mean? Like, I was getting no views on that stuff as it was. This was the one thing that finally got it going. So, a lot of people know the story already, but I had a conversation with Justin Masson from Nintendo Dads, and that's when we basically... he was on one of my episodes, one of my podcasts.
Was that when... I don't know when I found out about your channel, but I remember a long time ago I came across the Nintendo Dad's channel, and around the time I'd recently become a father, so I was really into their stuff. And I don't know if that's how I came across you, if you were on one of their episodes, or if I came across you in a different way.
There's two ways that we're kind of connected. So the one way is Nintendo Dads, because I was on a couple of their episodes prior. I was actually on their episode when I rebranded. I actually announced my rebrand on their show. So I went from Geek Guru to Nintendo Guru. The other way is through Joey Ferris, which is Commonwealth Realm now. And because you guys did some collab work a couple of years ago, I think. And that's when I was actually the Geek Guru at that time. You guys did some collab work together. And then I did some stuff for Commonwealth Realm. I did one video with him, Breath of the Wild stuff, as it may be. I think my video that I did with them is like the different modes of transportation within Breath of the Wild. So Justin was like, hey man, you do all this Nintendo stuff, like you have a deep passion for it, you should do more. And I was like, you know what? And he's like, why don't you rebrand? And I was like, you know what, that's a good idea. So I went downstairs. My wife has a YouTube channel, and the Working Housewife, you know, I got to plug her, because she's watching, she'll punch me in the throat if I don't.
I'll have to check that out later.
But she got like 5,000 subscribers. So like when I hit like a big milestone, I show her. She just flashes her numbers in front of me. I'm like, yeah, thank you, whatever. So, but she's the one that pushed me to actually get into YouTube as it was. But Justin pushed me to go to the Nintendo Guru type stuff. So I rebranded and I did it all. So when I came out the gates, like I had all these ideas and started going, but I was still struggling to find my way. And then recently I feel like I've hit my stride where things are starting to come together and I'm doing what I want to do and everything's tend to be working well. But still, I do Nintendo Talk every day and I'm doing the news. And it's weird because I'll do a Nintendo Talk today and it'll blow up. And I did one about Metroid like 4 weeks ago. It's like 20,000 views, and I'm like, I don't know what the heck happened. Like, I don't know what happened. You know what I mean? And then the next, I go one from 20,000 views to 80 views, and I'm like, what is going on? Like, it doesn't make sense, you know?
Yeah, it's I've had that happen a couple of times to where like I've debated on should I make this video or not, and I was like, it'll just take 10 minutes, might as well go ahead and like write out the script. I do it, and the next day I wake up and it has tons and tons of views, but then I'll put a lot of work like all week working on one video, and it won't get like 10% of the views, and it's like what's going on here?
It's the ones I'm excited for that don't do anything. And it's like, really? Like, I really put my heart into this one. Like, I was editing for 3 hours. Like, I really did, and I got nothing. And then the ones where I just slap together, and I'm like, oh, whatever. I don't like doing this. Those ones take off, and I'm like, this is so stupid. I don't understand how this whole thing works.
The first one that irritated me that I did was back when the Switch was just called the NX. I had posted something that was like top 10 potential NX launch titles, and instead of like I had my daughter with me, so I was like holding her, trying to get her to sleep while I was editing the video. So while she was sleeping, instead of using gameplay and making it like a very difficult edit, I just used screenshots and pictures of the games that I was talking about, and it would just like zoom in and zoom out on the pictures, and it was the fastest video I ever made that passed 100,000 views. And I was like, this is the video that everybody's seeing? And when they think of my channel, they're going to think of this? Why couldn't it be this other video that I worked like all week on?
Oh, that is so funny. But it's so true. That's the funny thing. Like, we only people that like do this and do it on a steady basis get that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, a lot of people just go like, oh, well, they see the videos that are like highlighted in the big numbers. Like, oh, you get big views all the time. It's like, trust me, I look at stuff and I want to like slam my head through the desk because I'm like, why is this not working? You know what I mean? It's funny because when I first started, I still have him. He still works with me occasionally. One of my co-hosts on my podcast, Toby Thornton, who lives in England, and he would do videos for me all the time. But he would get so frustrated because he would look at the views and the views were nothing. He's like, your videos get all these views and mine get nothing, and I'm like, dude, I don't know what to tell you, man. I can't figure it out myself. You know what I mean? And now I post his videos, and they actually get some traction. They're taking off. I'm like, see, dude, there you go, man. It's like, it's just, people are fickle, man. It's just weird how they do. And it's, the main thing is, the one thing that I've learned in all this, and it's probably the biggest tip that I can give anybody that's getting into this, is just stay consistent. Just keep producing content. Like, eventually you'll get lucky and something will just grab and hold and go, and that's just basically what you got to do. But it is, YouTube is such a fickle thing. One thing go ahead.
I was going to say that there's a YouTube channel. It's one of my favorite YouTube channels. I came across them when they only had like 10 or 15 videos. They were just starting out. It's Two Button Crew, if you've ever heard of them.
I've never heard of them. I gotta check them out.
Never. All right, it's two best friends that on the weekend they shoot 5 or 6 videos, and then Monday through Friday they have one video uploading, and every single day they have a new video going up that's something related to Nintendo, whether it's news, thoughts on what the next Metroid game should be, like any topic you could think of. They were doing it. They had professional setup, like a expensive camera, microphones, really good lighting, nice background, kind of like the one you have. So they had all this stuff going into it, and I was like, I wonder if these people were like the editors, or they did the background work of a really big YouTube channel, and then they decided to break off, and they have all the experience. That's why their content is so amazing, but they don't have that many views. And it turns out that they didn't. They were just friends that started out. They had a little bit of experience with graphic design, stuff like that. And it always irritated me because I would make these videos that would get so much views, and I would be like, well, this video on my channel sucks compared to the stuff that they're doing, but they're not getting any credit. I don't know if it's like descriptions that they're not doing right, the tags, the titles, or what the problem was. But they just recently passed, I think it was 1,000 subscribers. That's like awesome. You, but they were doing it for like 2 or 3 years, and they were only getting like a few hundred views a day. And I'm like, what's going on here? Their videos are so good, it's just nobody knows about it.
Yeah. That's the thing. That's the one thing. It's a humbling comment, but it's also, like you say, a little frustrating, is when people will come in and they'll just be like, dude, this video is awesome. How do you only have this many subscribers? And I'm just like, I don't know. Like, I don't know the answer, you know, and it's weird because, and that's, like, I had the Metroid video, and it's over 20,000 views, and I'm like, I wish I knew how that had 20,000 views. Like, I wish I knew what happened to get that thing, the eyes on it that it did.
I think it's all luck.
A lot of it's luck, but I also wonder, is it something that someone, and that's the one thing that annoys me about YouTube, is I wish there was a way, because there's obviously a way, it's Google, they have to know a way to track it. I wish they gave us better tracking devices to go, it's obvious that Metroid video was put somewhere, that someone dropped that somewhere, whether to say, look at this idiot, he don't know what he's talking about, or, which is probably what happened, but, or it's one of those things like, hey man, what do you think of this guy's views? Something had to go someplace. And that's where I wish YouTube, I could look at it and go like, hey, you know what? This GameOverJesse Nintendo Talk was through the roof. Why? And then I could look and go, oh, you know what? There's a, you know, an I Love Jesse subreddit over here someplace, and someone dropped it there. You know, like that would be, ultimately for me, that would be the thing that would help us, because we could figure out like, hey, my stuff is going on Reddit, or it went to NeoGAF, this particular video, or it went to a Facebook group, or it went someplace. Like, we could track to see where things were. And it's crazy, because I used to have websites back in the day, years ago when I was a younger guy, when I was in my early 20s, I used to draw a webcomic every single day. And I had my own website, and I had analytics in there that I could actually track somebody to see where this stuff went. And at one time, as time moved on, I was like, I'm going to start a NASCAR webcomic. And I was doing a NASCAR webcomic. And I remember this one time I did a comic book, or a comic strip of, it was a one-frame comic. And it just had like a picture with something, and then it had like a title or a joke behind it. And Dale Jr. had won like the Daytona 500 or something. And it was his first time he won. And what I did was I drew a picture of Dale Jr. celebrating, and then a ghost of Senior hugging him. And I don't even know what the sub thing was or whatever. And this thing took off. Like, it had views all over the place. And my first reaction was like, well, of course it's Dale Jr. People love Dale Jr. No big deal. They love Dale Senior. No big deal. But then I went and I looked, because it just kept going and going and going. I'm like, what the? So I looked at my statistics. I'm like, here, someone dropped it in a Dale Jr. fan forum and was like, this is the cutest thing, look at this, and that's what took off. And I was like, man, I wish Google would do something like that. Like, obviously the technology's there. This was 10, 15 years ago. So it can be a little frustrating, especially when you do get something that has a lot of views, and it's just like, what the heck, you know? And even something that doesn't have a lot of views, like you go, you know, or the clicks are just not there, or they, you know, where are people coming in from? So it's funny, because I was talking to a guy the other day, and he was like, I was on a podcast, he's like, dude, I gotta tell you, man, your stuff is showing up in the recommended all the time now. Like, he's like, I'm going to Game Explain, and I'm seeing, I'm like, well, that feels good, you know what I mean, that I'm showing up there. But it's like, I think that also takes time. You know, the algorithm's got to get in there for things to happen. So I think that could be potentially why they didn't have a lot of views either, because sometimes that stuff just takes time to kind of interweave to go, this is where it's going to go, and this is where it's going to go. So we're gonna go back a little bit. I want to ask a question that's kind of a little thing. What was your first Nintendo console?
Probably the Super Nintendo, which also takes me to the first video game that I played, which was A Link to the Past. And I've told this story a few times, and I was maybe 3 years old, however old I was to where I could barely remember anything. My brother, who was 3 years older than me, was getting on the bus to go to school. And some of the earliest memories I have was him, the whole family waking up, him getting on the bus, going to school, and then while he's getting ready for school, me and my mom or me and my dad would just sit there and play A Link to the Past. And that's what got me hooked on Zelda, was playing A Link to the Past, because we would play like Mortal Kombat, The Lion King, Aladdin, all these other Super Nintendo and Sega games, and none of them was as great as A Link to the Past was. And then when the Nintendo 64 came out, I played Ocarina of Time, and that was when I joke around, say I got addicted to the Zelda series, because it went from this 2D top-down, A Link to the Past style game to the first 3D game that I played was Ocarina of Time, and it was just so great. And like every day coming home from school, that's basically all I would do, is like try to explore every single inch of that land. And so first console, Super Nintendo, with A Link to the Past.
Okay, so I'm gonna go through a series of these real quick. So that was your first console that you owned. What was the first Nintendo console that you bought with your own money?
With my own money, it would be either the Wii or the 3DS.
Okay.
Because I bought both on the same day.
Oh, jeez.
Because the Nintendo 64, the GameCube were all like Christmas or birthday presents. And, actually, I don't know if this counts. A Game Boy Color, I believe.
That counts?
I traded... No, how I got it. I traded a deck of Yu-Gi-Oh cards to one of my friends in like 6th grade for his Game Boy Color and Final Fantasy 2.
He got ripped off. He got totally ripped off.
Yeah, that was the first time that I got a console that was like just me, like trading, buying. But then the first one that I actually like paid with cash at a store, got brand new, was the Wii and the 3DS. So
it's funny because I tell people, it's kind of funny. I always tell people the N64, but when you just said that, like I remember I actually bought a Game Boy, the original Game Boy brick, and I was working for my grandfather at the time, and my cousin and I were doing like side jobs and stuff too, and my dad was doing. We were slow, and he was like, "Guys, go around the yard and pick up all the steel," and he got us his cutter because there was this area there. My grandfather used to own a big gravel pit. And he's like, go through this area, cut out all the steel out of the ground, because we got to get it, like, cut it as low as you can to the ground, because we got to cover it so it doesn't pop people's tires and all that. They were building, like, a parking area. And me and my cousin go through and we're cutting, we're loading the pickup truck, so we go to the junkyard on the Saturday. And at the time, the rule was all the money I made, half of it had to go into my paycheck. Or, half of it had to go into the bank. The rest I could spend. So I'm making, like, $4 an hour, right? I'm a kid. I'm getting $4 an hour, whatever, and half's going to the bank, half I'm keeping. So I'm saving all my money because I'm getting Nintendo Power at the time, and I'm like freaking out. I'm putting the money aside, and we go to my other grandfather used to own a bar, and they'd make pizzas and all that stuff. So I said to my cousin, like, look, let's go to the dump, and then my grandfather lives right down the street, or the bar is right down the street. Let's go down there. We'll visit my grandparents because they used to live above the bar, and I was like, we'll go down, we'll get it, and then we'll go in and we'll get a pizza. And he's like, oh, that's awesome, whatever. So we go down there, and my grandfather was like, hey, what are you guys doing? We're like, we just went down to the junkyard, we dropped off some junk. He goes, you know what, if you want, I got some stuff in the garage I got to get rid of. Why don't I give it to you, and you guys run it down? We're like, okay, no problem. So he paid us $40 to go do this. So we just got paid like $200 or $100 from the junkyard. Then he gives us 40, so we split that. We each take 20. We go back to the junkyard. We didn't realize because he gave us refrigerators. They paid us for the refrigerators because of the motors, right? And so we got more money out of that. So I'm like, hey, do me a favor. My cousin named Vernon. I was like, Vernon, do me a favor. Let's run to Toys R Us. I want to buy this Game Boy that just came out. He's like, okay. And I walk in the house, or I walk in there, I buy the Game Boy, and I buy that, and it came with Tetris, and I bought Super Mario Land. And I go home, and I'm like, Dad, look at this, man. I bought this. And he's like, where did you get the money for this? And I explained everything I just told you. And he's like, you spent your money on this piece of junk? And I'm like, what? He's like, get out of my face. He goes, leave the thing there. I don't know if you're going to keep that or not. He's like, get out of my face, go in the bedroom. I'm like, I'm devastated. I'm like, I just spent all my money on this thing. He's like, you know half your money's going to go in the bank. And I'm like, I saved the money, man. I don't know what you're talking about. So he got all frustrated. I guess he called my grandfather and was like, why'd you give him money and this and that? He's like, Robert, what am I going to... I'm 50-something years old. I can't lift these refrigerators. He's like, I don't care. I gave the kids money. They did the work. Like, shut up. Leave him alone. He bought something with it. Like, leave him. That guy from my grandfather, because my dad would have never... So my dad walks in and goes, your grandfather, he said it was fine, whatever. Here you go. Keep it. He's like, it's still stupid. I can't believe you bought it. And he's like, it's a waste of money. I'm like, I thought it was the greatest thing ever. Like, because typically before that, we had them, like, Tiger... LCD like things like where little dots, horrible stuff, So it was like, hey man, I actually get to do something, and so I don't know if you have the chat up at the moment.
Yeah.
Someone just came in there, Polly Babbitt Games. That's the guy that I was talking about earlier. That was like, hey man, tell Jesse I said hello, man. So Joseph Moran, there's your shout out for the time being. So. Jesse knows that you love him now. You're fangirling about him earlier.
Thank you for being a fan of the videos. And I see a few other familiar names in there too. RPG.
Yes.
I see him in my chats a lot, so it's nice to see there's some
crossover
viewers that we share. Yeah.
It's kind of neat. Okay, so we got through that. Now the next question is what's your favorite Zelda? What's your favorite Nintendo console of everything?
Oh god, I really am loving the Switch. If only they had the Virtual Console on there to where you could play some of the older games. I think that takes it. But these games are this question. Like there's a lot of variables with it because it's like, are you talking about games that came out specifically for it? Can you count games that were re-released on it? Like if you pick the 3DS, because Zelda's my favorite series, you have Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, A Link Between Worlds, Triforce Heroes, and then Hyrule Warriors Legends. So that's like 4 of them are great Zelda games. I don't know what you would call Hyrule Warriors Legends.
It's alright. I liked it on the Wii U. The 3DS, it ran kind of bad. But if you had a 3DS XL or the new 3DS, it ran better. But the original one was, it's slog.
So you have a good choice of games that were released specifically for the 3DS, but then if you look at Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, the better games on the 3DS, those were originally for the Nintendo 64. Yeah. So if I picked the 3DS just because of those two games, would I rather just pick the Nintendo 64? So it's a bit odd. But honestly, I would right now say the Wii U, just because Wind Waker HD, Twilight Princess HD are really great. You have you can play all the old Wii games on it. There's all the virtual console games that you can play off screen or on the TV.
Yeah.
So as clunky as it is, I've heard a lot of people say it looks like a Fisher-Price toy, but I love the games that are accessible on the Wii U.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the Wii U as it is, but at least the games that you can play on the Wii U. If they ever bring the Virtual Console with all those games over to the Switch, that would be hands down my favorite, because playing A Link to the Past or Super Mario World on the go would be really great.
I love the Wii U. You know what I mean? Like, it's not my favorite console. My favorite console is the SNES. Like, I feel like that is hands down the best console they ever did in terms of, like, I love the controller. I feel like the controller is just, at the time, I mean, when you think about, like, the NES, when they went from the NES to the SNES, it kind of just fit perfectly in your hands. You had the trigger buttons there. It was the first controller that ever had trigger buttons. And it just, the games, like, the thing that I loved about it was it took all the games that you loved on the NES and just made them look better, but they were also just better games. You know, like, I love the original Zelda. Link to the Past is, hands down, one of my favorite Zelda games ever. I would probably Breath of the Wild is kind of fighting for it right now. Like I want to give it time to see what the long term of Breath of the Wild is. Like I played Link to the Past so many times over and over and over again, and just love that whole thing. I love the opening sequence when you come out of the house and it's raining and it's like dreary and you don't know what's going on and you're kind of like, I love that whole thing. So, but Breath of the Wild is pretty damn awesome. I mean, I can't take anything from that. So that said, for me, just the Super Nintendo just had so much going for it. Like,
They had a lot of really great RPGs that released for it as well.
Yes.
There's a lot of great Square Enix and
God,
the Castlevania games on it were really great.
I mean, Final Fantasy was awesome. Chrono Trigger was awesome. Secret of Mana, Secret of Evermore, Final Fantasy 2. I mean, dude, they just had it was like an RPG machine. They just cranked Earthbound, Super Mario RPG. Like they had so many great games.
Legend of Gaia, I believe.
Yeah.
That was one that I always played.
That was a good one. So yeah, I would agree. Like I like my N64, but I think the N64 for me was kind of one of those things where it was Nintendo was the big dog, and it really didn't have any competition because Sega fought tooth and nail, but they just never really pushed. They had that one moment where you thought, like, okay, this could go either way, but then Nintendo just took off and just kept going further and further. And then, but Sony, I remember when Sony first got announced with the PlayStation 1, my first impression was, these guys, come on, what are they going to do? You know what I mean? And I was like, they're not going to do anything. Like, this is stupid. Like, they don't make games. Nintendo makes games. And then they announced that they got Final Fantasy VII, and I was like, oh man, this is going to be bad.
All those third parties.
Yeah, they all just jumped ship, and it was it. And it's funny now as an adult, and I go back and I read and I learn about that time, and the whole thing of like, people don't realize how deep that really, like, you hear the real, like, simple answer of, like, Nintendo threw the bone to Sony on the E3 stage and was just like, no, we're going to partner with Philips. There was a lot more to it. Like, even after that, Square Enix and a lot of third-party companies went to Nintendo and begged them, don't do this. Stick with Sony. But the problem that a lot of people also don't know is Nintendo backed themselves into such a bad deal with it that they went from all the power to no power. They literally just let Sony just walk all over them. And it was like, holy crap, like, how did you do this? How did you agree to this? And so I totally get why Nintendo walked from them. I think the way they walked is probably the bad thing, but at that time, they thought they owned the world pretty much. Like, they were just killing it on all fronts, so... but I remember reading an article where Squaresoft at the time went to Nintendo and was like, we can't do this. Like, we can't put Final Fantasy VII on your console. It's going to take 12 cartridges to do. We can't do this. And they begged them, please work with these guys. And that's when Nintendo started to tinker with the disc system that never took off and never did anything. And Square was like, we got to go. And they left. And that was the whole... Like, that to me, as a kid, I don't even know how old I was. But I remember as a kid, like, I bought the PS1 for Final Fantasy VII, and I was devastated. Like, I liken it to, like... That was like watching Mommy and Daddy get a divorce. And it was just like... Because I was so... Like, Nintendo brought Final Fantasy to me. You know what I mean? Like, so it just killed me. So, I don't know. So I'm assuming from this whole conversation, I'd be a fool to not know. Zelda's your favorite franchise of all time.
Yeah.
What's your favorite Zelda game?
I was talking about this earlier. As great as Breath of the Wild is, I have to give it some time to sink in, because after I played Skyward Sword for the first time, the story in it was really great, and I was instantly like, this is hands down the best Zelda game. But then a few months passed, and I was replaying other Zelda games, and I was like, well, maybe it's not as great as I thought it was. But now I'm back at the point to where, after playing Breath of the Wild, it really made me miss Skyward Sword, because it had everything that I loved from the other Zelda games but a little bit better. It had the relationships between the NPCs. Like with Breath of the Wild, as great as it is, I can't name off like more than maybe 5 or 10 NPCs in that game, to where if you look at Majora's Mask or Skyward Sword, you know almost all of the NPCs, like especially in Majora's Mask, like where they are at very specific times, what their story is, what you have to do to help them. Skyward Sword has a little bit of that. It's not as complicated, but you still get to know like who people are, who they're friends with, who they're not friends with. Where in Breath of the Wild, it's just these people are at this stable, and then these people are here. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you can go to Zoro's domain, you'll see the person there. And Skyward Sword just made it feel more alive. And even when you were off Skyloft, the story made you want to know what happens next. Where's this going to go? How does this happen? And it tells, or tries to tell, the story of how it all started. And I think that's really great, to where Breath of the Wild kind of separates itself, to where it takes little things from all the different Zelda games, and then it's like, well, it could be linked to this game, but then there's also this other reference that puts it here. So it's great because you get all of your favorite things from all of the different Zelda games in Breath of the Wild, but for a cohesive story, which is one of the reasons why I like games. Like, the graphics are great, gameplay's great, but what keeps me going is the story, and the gameplay is what makes it like it's that extra, if that makes sense. Which, games like Super Mario World for the Super Nintendo, really great gameplay, not really a story, just play one level, go to the next level. It's all about gameplay. So story's not necessarily the most important thing, but I feel like if you have a game that's already great at gameplay, like most Zelda games are, then if you do have a really good story, then it just makes it that much better. To where, like, A Link Between Worlds had great gameplay, but the story wasn't that great, so it kind of falls back for me compared to the other Zelda games, where Skyward Sword had great gameplay, unique gameplay that you literally can't get from any other game. Yeah. And then the story just adds to it, to where it's like, it's fun to play, so you don't want to put it down because it's actually fun to play. But then the story makes you keep thinking, well, what happens next? What do I do? Where's this going to go? So, sorry for the long...
Stop. You're fine. Listen, that's what this is. This is conversation. Don't worry about it. You don't have to apologize for anything. If it's a problem, I'm probably the most long-winded person in the world, so you're not going to hear me complain at all listening to you go. Have you played Odyssey at all yet, or no? Have you demoed it anywhere?
Okay. I haven't had the chance, no.
So, this is a hypothetical, because we don't know. We haven't played it yet. But my question would be is, can Zelda win Game of the Year at this point? Or do you think Odyssey can swoop in and steal it?
I think it really just depends on how much of Odyssey have they not showed us. Yeah. Where Breath of the Wild, for the longest time, they only showed us the Great Plateau. And then once you got off the Great Plateau, there was like this gigantic world, to where this is, they said it was more like open world-ish, but the world was contained to each of these sandboxes. So I just don't see, like, this is the same thing. Like, if you go back to like 1998 and you had Super Mario 64 with Ocarina of Time. Like, the year before Super Mario 64 released, everyone was like, oh, this is amazing, they did 3D right. And then Ocarina of Time came, and it's like, they did 3D right, and they gave it like all these complicated dungeons, this great story and everything. And I feel it's the same thing but reversed, to where this time we got Zelda first, and then Odyssey has to live up to the hype of not just coming after Breath of the Wild as Nintendo's next big game, but you're also coming off the back of Super Mario Galaxy and Galaxy 2, which, if I remember correctly, it's on Metacritic or somewhere. It's some review site. They took all of the average review scores from all of the major websites, and the #1 rated game ever was Super Mario Galaxy 2.
Okay.
So it has to compete with that expectation to where that game, I guess, got more 10s or 9s than any other game. And I don't know if Super Mario Odyssey can do it, especially like there's a lot of people that don't really like the motion controls. And it seems like a big part of this game is Nintendo wants you to play it with motion controls, kind of like with ARMS. You can play it with the standard controls or motion controls. And they have that weird second player thing to where someone can play as the hat, and I'm just like, why not just put Luigi in there or something? Like, give us real multiplayer. So I don't know. I think that might hold it back with some people to where it gives them like a little tease of multiplayer.
I gotta say this, Jesse. You know what this sounds like? You know, you want Zelda to win Game of the Year.
Yeah,
and you're trying to make
it's just like I love Mario games and I love Zelda games, but it's just like Breath of the Wild was really great.
Yeah, I loved it.
For a game, like most places gave Breath of the Wild a 5 out of 5 or a 10 out of 10. Yeah. So for something to do better than that, it's like you're just comparing one masterpiece to another.
I think the thing is when you look at Breath of the Wild, for me personally, this is what, like, I've said this numerous times. Like, I don't feel like, of all Zelda games, I feel like it was finally the time that this was a true Zelda game. Without spoiling it for those that haven't played it yet, but it's, you know, she does things in this game. She makes sacrifices in this game and goes against her wants in the world to do what's best for the world. And, you know, that to me is a huge thing that's come a long way. Like, typically, as growing up and playing, it was always Zelda was a damsel in distress. And there's people that will try to say that that's what she is in this one, and I argue that you did not play the game if that's how you feel. Because I walked away from this going like, wow, this is crazy. The only issues I have with Breath of the Wild are two things. One, I felt like the dungeon, the final castle, just was a little too easy to navigate through than I thought it was going to be. Because I was so afraid to go to it for so long. And then when I finally went to it, it was just like, this is crazy. This is just pretty breeze through. I felt like it could have been deeper and hard. I actually stumbled into Ganon by mistake. I thought I was actually going to go, like, I thought it'd be like a mini boss battle. Because when you're going through you're coming through the castle the first time, and you land in, there's a line, the cage is closed, and you're in there with that Lionel, and it's like, holy crap, man. I'm not ready for this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I thought it was going to be more stuff like that, like going into chambers and dumbing into these things. And of course, if you go in through the basement, there's a whole thing down there and all that. But at the end of the day, like, it wasn't that difficult to find Ganon and get to Ganon. So I wish that would have been a little bit more difficult, like more of a dungeon-esque type setup. But it was kind of set up like everything. You could attack that castle from all different angles and get to where you wanted to go. That's one. Two, I just wish there was more story to it. I loved the memories. I loved that whole aspect of, like, finding memories and unlocking them. So I just wish we could have got more of that. Like, I loved it so much. I was just like, man, I wish there was like 50 memories. Like, this was like, don't give me 900 Korok seeds. Give me 900 memories, man. Give me a reason to want to go do this stuff. And I'm not knocking the game at all. Like, but that was my
conspiracy with Breath of the Wild is, like how you said, more memories and stuff. A lot of people said they wanted traditional temple dungeons, and my thought, or my big conspiracy, is that Nintendo thought of all this stuff. Yeah. They knew people wanted real temples. They knew people wanted to swim underwater. They knew people wanted a larger variety of enemies. But if they put everything into one game, they wouldn't have nowhere to go for the next game. So maybe they saved all that stuff so it would be easier for them to try and make it better. Otherwise, if you put literally everything you have in one game, it's like, well, where do you go from here?
Yeah, and the one thing I will say is the creation of this game, if anybody goes back and listens to it, it was more or less like the Zelda team, after Skyward Sword got kind of a bum rap where you were so controlled of where you went. And it got to that point where it was so bad. The hand holding was so bad in Skyward Sword, where it was just like, you wanted to go left, Fee would jump out the back and stop you. And go, no, you should go that way. And it was like, I don't want to go that way. I want to go this way. Like, leave me alone, you know? And it was like, she forced you to go where the game and Nintendo wanted you to go. And the development teams went to Iwata and was just like, this is what we want to do. And he was like, make a wish list. Make a huge wish list of everything you want to do. And they did. They sat down for a month or something and put together this huge wish list. And they were going to message boards and forums and reading stuff and seeing what the fans wanted and taking their ideas and going, this works, this wouldn't work. And they built this thing and they went to Iwata and Iwata was like, do it all. Whatever you want to do it. So what I hope is that kind of mindset continues. And now they go, now let's find out what they didn't like about Breath of the Wild. Let's take what they loved about it and what they didn't love, and let's throw it all together. And now we make the next game and continue on going that way. Because I feel like they have what I felt like, and they made a lot of references to it, was the original Zelda. Like, I felt like this was kind of like the original Zelda. Original Zelda dropped you off and was like, you didn't know what was going on. It was like, boom, go. Just go where you want to go. And it was like, wow. You know, like, if you don't go into that cave and get the wooden sword off the old man, you're in for a rude awakening when you start running around. You know what I mean? Like, so it's crazy to think this is kind of the same thing. Like, they drop you off in that cave. You know how many people I know that I talked to that just ran out of the cave and didn't realize there was treasure chests back there to pick up stuff and get a couple of items before you could leave? And it's like, and that's what you could do. And it was just like, there's nothing like, I feel like that moment of coming out of the cave and looking around and seeing how massive the world is, that's a defining moment in gaming. Like, there's only so many times that happens to you, I feel, in life. And this was one of those moments where when I came, I tell a story where I made my wife stop. She was playing Fallout 4, and I'm like, you're not playing Fallout 4. You're going to watch this opening sequence. And when it got done, she was just like, oh my God, that was amazing. Like,
that's what I tell a lot of people, is just play like the first 15 minutes of Breath of the Wild. Yeah. And then if you want to stop, you can.
And that's the
thing. But you're not
going
going to.
You're not going to. You just keep going through. Like, that's the funny thing. Like, all the complaints that came out afterwards, it was like, really? Like, that's what you took away from this? Because I had so much fun. For the people that were just like, oh, I hate when the weapons break. Yeah, the weapons break a lot. But you know what? When you start to get them stronger weapons, they don't break as much, and it just makes you start to feel better and better and better about it. Like, I really enjoyed that game. I do hope that they do a couple things, like, with the, because I do agree with the whole, I wish there was dungeons and temples. Yeah. That would have been nice to have. But I liked the shrines. I liked the little mini, things.
Yeah, the shrines were great. Like, it would have been, again, like, I think they didn't do it so they could have an easy way to make the second one, or try to make the second one better. But if they would have just, instead of 120 shrines, if there would have been 60, just cut it in half. That's still a lot of shrines.
It's a lot of
and
shrines,
then
man.
You could put those ideas or concepts you had for each individual shrine, take 10 of them, put it together, and combine it to an overall fire theme or a water theme. And just use the same ideas you had for puzzles and just different rooms of a single dungeon. Yeah. And then it would have been enough to make people be like, oh, it has all these mini dungeons plus these real dungeons.
Because I feel like they kind of got a little lazy with some of the dungeons or some of the shrines, where, like, you get in and it was just like, here you go, like, here's the treasure. And it was like, really? That's all you're gonna make me do? Is just open the shrine? And I mean, some of them, don't get me wrong, were so hard to get to. It was like, oh, thank you. You know what I mean? But some of them was just like, really? You could have done something in here.
Eventide Island.
Yeah, that
where, like, the puzzle was on the outside of the shrine.
And I was fine with that one. I loved it because I was like, this is cool. It was hard enough just to get there. And you know what the crazy thing is? That's the funny thing. Like, I love that's what I love about this game, is everybody will come at it different ways. So I had the ice power. You know what I mean? Like, everybody has the ice power by the time you get off the Great Plateau. I'm like an idiot trying to paraglide out to it. And I kept trying and trying. Not once did I go, hey, rocket scientist, you can actually just build ice things and get out there. It might take you a little bit, but you can do that. And I was like, and not only that, there's a raft over there. I could have just went and got a leaf. And idiot me, I kept getting up on the cliff and running, and I'm like, just short. And I was like, I gotta get more shrines. I gotta power up my stamina. Stupid. That's what I love about that game though, because everybody comes at it from a different angle, and it's like I remember I was live streaming it one time, and I was in a shrine, and it was this weird thing where you had to drop the ball down, the ball goes down, and then the wind blows it around, and it's kind of like it's like a golf course, so to speak, but you had to like set things up, and I couldn't get it, and so in the stream like I didn't do it that way, I did it this way, and I was like, that's a good idea, and I grabbed the ball, and basically what you do is you freeze it and you whack it a couple times and make it go up the ramp, but it gives you enough time to run around. And when I did it the way I did it, he was like, I didn't even do it that way, that is really cool. And it was like, that's 3 ways to beat that one shrine that ultimately could have been done. And it's just like, that's what I loved about it. Like, I don't know, man, what's in Breath of the Wild, how long before you finally was like, okay, it's time to go after Ganon? Like, how many hours did you put in before you actually was like, okay, let's do this?
I don't know how many hours, but I waited until I had finished all 4 of the Divine Beasts. Mm-hmm. I completed maybe half of the shrines. Okay. And the first time that I actually went into Hyrule Castle, I was just like, I want to explore. If I die, then I'll just leave, come back whenever I'm ready. Yeah. And I went in, and it was just filled with all these powerful weapons and like really great food, consumables and stuff. But I didn't make it to Ganon at that point. It was just me going in, exploring, reading some stuff, and then I left. And I had all these powerful weapons. And then I was like, luckily I didn't stumble upon Ganon like you did.
Yeah.
So I carefully stayed away from the castle until it was time to get all 4 of the Divine Beasts. Then I got all 12 of the memories. I think it was 12, maybe it was like 16. I don't really remember how many there was, but I got all the memories. I got all the Divine Beasts, and then I went to it. I didn't get all of the shrines, and I didn't get all of the Korok seeds, but I got like most of the story stuff, and then I went to it.
The Korok seeds I'm never going to do. I'm not going after 9. A friend of mine actually did all 900, and I'm like, you're insane, dude. Like,
yeah, I think
what is wrong with you?
Someone told me that like after so many 100, you stop getting the extra slots for weapons and stuff.
Yeah. So at that point, what's the point of it? Like,
yeah.
To what? To get a golden turd at the end of it? Like, I'll pass. Like, give me something better than that. That was insanity.
The Korok mask was a really great idea from Nintendo, though. That way, like, you may have walked.
Everyone.
What in the world? Sorry, my phone. The Korok mask. You could travel on a certain path so many different times, and keep missing something. But if you put on that Korok mask, then if you're on that same path, it might start shaking, and you're like, oh, there's a Korok here that you never would have noticed otherwise. Yeah. So it's great if you're just running around exploring, you can put it on, but for someone to put it on, or even if you didn't have the Korok mask, and you tried to get every single Korok without a guide, that's just insane.
That's insane.
Yeah.
It's the thing of it is, and this is what people don't realize too, is and this is only stuff that comes out afterwards. Originally, that first DLC pack, they wanted it to be in the original game, but they recognized that if they did that, they would have had to delay the game, and they did not want to delay the game. So, could you imagine? Like, I couldn't imagine if they would have delayed that game. I don't think Switch comes out the way it does. Like, I really don't. I think they're in trouble. You know what I mean? Like, it would have came out with a few games. You would have gotten Mario. They probably would have pushed Mario Kart up to be a launch game, honestly.
Yeah.
They would have had to have, because there's no way that you could launch without something. But I think even with Zelda, launch day, pre-Switch launch, like, people were complaining. Because at the time, it was only 5 games. And then it, as the momentum went, more people started announcing, and it got up to, like, 12 at launch day. But, like, I could not imagine if they did not launch with Zelda, like, where Switch would be right now. Because, man, that game is, like, that's my thing. Like, if you're going to only launch with 5 games, it's not a bad thing to launch with the game of the year. Like, that's it's a pretty good thing to launch with, and they did that, man. I mean, they crushed it with that game.
I heard this one podcast I was listening to said that they felt like Breath of the Wild was held back for Switch, and the Switch was released early for Breath of the Wild because they didn't want to delay Breath of the Wild anymore to launch on the Switch at a later date. Mm-hmm. So they just rushed the Switch to launch, which is why it didn't have YouTube, it didn't have Netflix, all this stuff that realistically they could just press a button and put on there. Like the 3DS had Netflix and everything. So it's like, if that can have it, then there's no reason Switch can't. And I think there was even a statement from Netflix where they said they've had the app ready. They're just waiting for Nintendo's approval.
Yeah. My thing is this, I've felt this for a while. I felt that from March to Christmas was a beta test pre-launch. Like, I feel like in Nintendo's mind, there's two launches. The original, I feel like their idea was the original launch would go, look, you know that you're going to sell that 2 to 3 million like that because your core fan base is going to eat it up. Now you let them do the groundwork for you. You give them that, you give them Zelda. They scream and rave about it, and then in the meantime, we can work the kinks out because our fans are our fans. Our fans are going to stay there. We have 6 months in theory to build momentum, build hype for this gigantic launch at Christmas time, and then that's our true launch. I feel like what happens at Christmas is kind of what would have happened if they would have just launched an original, turn of events. Like, they would have in my mind, they would have had to have launched with everything that they've launched so far at Christmas in order to get the hype and the frenzy that they're going to have. Because they don't have, they got so much momentum building in. Like, they also needed this 6 months to get the third parties on board, because now the third parties are all coming on board. It gave them the ability to just become a strong company with the core of Nintendo, and it's to the point now mainstream is like you talk to anybody and they want to Switch. They are becoming a little bit easier, and you see them pictures popping up and people are kind of mocking it like, oh, I thought you can't find a Switch, and here they are. Talk to me at Christmas time, because I think once Christmas hits, you're not going to find them anymore, and we're going to go right back into that crunch, because I think they're going to move easily a couple million at Christmas without even blinking an eye. And I think that, at year one, they're going to be well beyond halfway of what Wii U did overall. That's crazy. Yeah. If you would have told me that, I would have said you are insane. Because I love Nintendo, but I was really at that one point just like, man, these guys are in trouble. I don't know what they're going to do. Like, they're really getting backed into a corner, and they're not moving much. So they got all the balls in their court right now. I mean, they're just rushing with it. They're crushing it right now. So the 4DS is a Switch.
I feel like, and something similar to how you're talking about, they have like two separate launches. Mm-hmm. Before the Nintendo Switch launched, I was on a podcast and they asked me how many units I thought the Nintendo Switch would sell for its first year until the holiday season, or for all of 2017. And my answer was just however many they can put out is how many they can sell. Yeah. Whether that's they can only make 2 million or they put out 5 million or even 10 million. Whatever they put out, they're going to sell, because people are going to buy it at the main launch for Breath of the Wild. People are going to buy it for the big Christmas holiday season. And then even after that, they have their third soft launch when they do announce, hey, all your favorite apps are coming. Virtual Console, Netflix, YouTube, Hulu, whatever else you want. I think that'll be like the big third launch.
Because I think, too, here's the other thing. So you launched the original launch, right, when we got it in March, and that's Zelda. Well, you and I know what Zelda is. You and I are hyped for that, and we're going to get on board with that. But what do? They take the icon, Mario, and put him at the holiday launch. And that makes sense. You drop him in where all the parents know and the kids know. They all know Mario. So that's the time you launch the second one. So I really think that they played this out well. And they tricked all the people that just think Mario and then buy the Mario game, because you got Mario Kart, you got Mario Rabbids, and then you got the real Mario. Yeah. We're getting ready to wrap up because we're going pretty we're diving
Oh,
into.
we skipped over it earlier. I don't think you answered. Which one do you think is going to be the better of the two, Odyssey or Breath of the Wild?
I think honestly. So this is my answer that I give quite often. So I'm worried because this is what I think happens. I think when you look at an IGN, right? So when IGN is picking their game of the years, the Nintendo fans in the office are going to pick a Nintendo game. The Sony fans are going to pick a Sony game, and so on and so forth. And I'm afraid what's going to happen is this. Zelda is so good, and Odyssey is so good, that they're going to eat each other's votes, and then Horizon is going to come up and kind of slip in there, and when it really shouldn't win, in my opinion. Like, I think that it's either Zelda... But for me personally, right now, Mario has to do a lot to take Zelda out. The other thing that worries me a little bit is Zelda was released in March, and Mario is releasing in October, and that kind of gives what have you done for me lately type thing, and it's one of them. So I think the DLC might help. You know what I mean? Like, if that DLC pack hits November, I think I just got an update on my Amiibo. It was November 10th, which typically means it's going to probably launch around that time. So if it launches November 10th, right, if that DLC pack hits November 10th, and then that might steal some of, which isn't that far off of Odyssey, that might steal some of the momentum back. But I think that Zelda is something special. And there's so much attention to detail with that game. Like, when you look at just the little things that they did, like Tingle Island and stuff, like, they put all these little things in there. Like, there's so many references to other Zelda games that are just, and there's so many Easter eggs within that game, and so many cool things, like the one character, the one NPC that looks like Iwata, and then there's even one that they say is Robin Williams. It's just
it looks like them.
Yeah, it looks like them, and it's just cool how they have these little things dropped in to the game. The gigantic Ganon horse and all these little things that they dropped into the game, like, is just amazing. And I even love, like, and I didn't know this, like, the thing that I loved so much about this is this. You play the game, and I play the game. And we play it two different ways. You know what I mean? Like, we could play in the same style, but it's, you could be on one part of the map, and I'm on another part of the map. And we have two different stories, and two different, like, flows of the game, and how it all comes together, you know? And I love that aspect of it. Like, I love that thing. Like, an example is one time I had my I have two shows that I do on the regular. I have three now, but I have two on the regular. And one is Nintendo PlayStation Podcast I do with my buddy Toby. And then I have another one called If We Ran Nintendo that I do with my buddy Sean Capri. And the three of us were kind of doing a podcast together one time. And all three of us are playing the same style game, which is tackle shrines, take out towers. All three of us were in different areas of the map. And we all had different stories to tell. And it was like, that is mind-blowing. To think that we were able to all play the same essential game. And, you know, the same style, but it's totally different. And that's something that Mario is not going to do. Everybody's going to have the same Mario game. Everybody's playing the same Mario game. It's not like there's different tales. You know what I mean? It's not like you play and you play and Bowser actually marries Peach. And I play and she marries Toad. And somebody else plays and marries... You know what I mean? Like, it's it's not that type of game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, it's pretty awesome. You know what I mean? So, I personally pick Zelda. I think that... Because here's the other thing that I think is not getting picked up on. How many open world games are there that we played over time, right? And
dozens.
Dozens and dozens. And the one thing that reigns true with every open world game is gigantic day one patches to fix all the problems. Nintendo comes out with their very first open world game. Guess what? No patch.
Yeah.
And it blows me away. Like, there's no glitches.
That's one of the things that I always said about Nintendo games. It's like, if it's Call of Duty or Battlefield, Grand Theft Auto, whatever the game is, Skyrim. Like, Skyrim's been out like 6 years now, probably, and it still gets patches to get fixed.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And with Nintendo, they release a game, and 99% of the time that's it. Like Smash Brothers got updates to further like level the playing field depending on which character you picked. But that's a fighting game. That's normal for fighting games to get patches and stuff. Splatoon got updates to give you more free levels and free weapons when it first came out. Mario Maker, it gave you free content and stuff whenever it came out. Zelda, I think it only had like a couple of patches, and that was probably to smooth out the frame rate a little bit. It's what everybody assumed, but no one really knew what it was. And it's like Nintendo games launch, and they're polished, they're good to go. You're not really going to find that many bugs in them. But then, like, Bethesda releases Skyrim, and then 6 years later, it's like you still see a cow floating in the air, and you're like, that's not supposed to be happening. Why is that dragon, like, that dragon's flying backwards? What's going on?
My wife, she platinum Fallout 4, right?
Yeah.
On the PlayStation 4. And leading up to Zelda, she was playing it all the time. And I would be here, like, editing videos and all that stuff. So there was this thing that she would do when she was playing Fallout 4 where she'd finish a mission, and then she would walk up and there'd be a group of people. And she would talk to the one to, like, pick the next mission. And 6 people are talking to her at once. And one day I finally took the headset off and I go, what the hell is going on with this game? That happens every single... She goes, I don't know, it's a glitch. And I'm like, this game is like 2 years old, and that glitch is still there? And she's like, yeah. And she's like, there's a bunch of glitches that are still here. And I'm like, holy cow, man. And here's Nintendo. The only major glitch is a slowdown, which, by the way, they fix 2 weeks after the game launches. Because it was something to do with the Wi-Fi. Like, really? That's it? They just set out a patch, boom, goes away. And it's like, and that slowdown really wasn't that big a deal, honestly. Like, I didn't have no issues with that slowdown. It was just
the only place that I seen real slowdowns was Korok Forest, but you're only there for like a very 1% of the time you're there.
Yeah, I could care less.
Like, get the Master Sword, hop out.
Yeah.
But what you were saying earlier about Breath of the Wild, like when you first start, I was wanting to say this, but we got sidetracked a bit. With Breath of the Wild, one of the things that I love is you were talking about when you come out and you see, like, the camera pans out, you see everything in front of you, you see how huge the world is. At that point, you could probably assume this, but it doesn't really show you behind you. Because if you look at the camera behind you, you see the entrance to the cave.
Yes.
What you don't know is there's a world almost the same size of what's in front of you. Behind you.
Yeah.
And there's a really great moment in the game. After I'd played for maybe 20 hours, I cashed in some of the spirit orbs, and this is going to the thing where everyone has their different stories. I cashed in the spirit orbs to get stamina or hearts or whatever. I was coming out of the Temple of Time, turned the corner, and was like, I haven't explored the southern part of the map yet. I'm going to go that way. As soon as I turned the corner, there's the lightning dragon that's flying over the lake and the bridge.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is this? I played this game for like 20, 30 hours, and I'm just now seeing this giant dragon flying around.
Those things are awesome. Dude, the first time... So I was playing, right? And I'm running across the field, and I'm going... I don't even know where I'm going. And I'm just running. And I look in the distance, I'm like, what the hell is that? And it's the fire one. And I'm like, oh my god. I'm like, I don't want nothing to do with that thing. Because I thought you actually had to fight him. I didn't realize what it was.
Volgaia from Ocarina.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't want nothing to do with that thing. I'm going this way now. And I did. I ran the opposite direction. The worst was, so the first time I decided I just wanted to try to get to the castle. I'm like, I'm just going to run to the castle and see if I can get there. And I wasn't strong at the time. And I start, like, running, right? And I'm running. And then, boom, you hear the Guardian music. And then I see the light on the back of my head. And I'm like, and I'm just trying to run faster, like, bink. And I was about probably, I wasn't that far from the castle. But I was like, I'm done. I'm going the opposite way.
Yeah.
And then finally, I went on I came around the one side to the left. Like, if you're looking at the castle, I came up on the left side, and I paraglided in. And it causes the whole Ganon scene. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh my god, I shouldn't be here. I felt like it was like I went to the wrong area, and I shouldn't have been there. And I was like, got real nervous, and I, like, go around this corner, and I drop down into a room, and that's when the cages drop, and the Lionel comes out, and he smoked me like that. I was like, it's time to go, and I fast traveled out, and I didn't even go back until I was really, really strong, and I was like...
I had, it was the Forgotten Temple or something, or maybe it was the one where, like, there's a big maze, and then you drop to the bottom, and there's the room with, like, 100 or 50 guardians, however many there are, and like all the lasers just point at you at the same time. When that happened to me, I was just like, in the same way you were saying that, like, I don't need to be here. That was my exact thought. Is you drop down the hole, and then I seen all the guardians, and every step you take, another one like puts its beam on you, and I was just thinking, I don't need to be here. I don't belong here. I need to leave. Get out of here while I can.
Exactly.
There's a treasure chest on the other side of the room, but I'll never make it there.
I'm not even gonna mess with it. I'm done. The crazy thing is this: even when I fought Ganon, like to this day, I will go up against Lionels and they'll beat me. And like I walked in and I smoked Ganon, like no problem at all. And I think that's probably a little bit of a letdown too. That like, how is a Lionel not running Hyrule? Like, these things are beasts, man. They are so OP. It's not even funny. Like, I'm assuming you're like the Zelda god over here. Have you messed with, I'm sure you messed with hard mode, right?
Yeah.
I'm afraid, just because everybody's talking about there's a gold Lionel on the Great Plateau, and I'm like, nah, I don't want to mess with that. I don't want nothing to do with that thing. The only advantage to Lionels are, they won't mess with you unless you mess with them. To some degree. Yeah,
that's in the same way that I was talking about, like when you drop into that hole in the basement or whatever, and you're like, I don't belong here. Yeah. When I first came across the Lionel on the Great Plateau, in my head, I was like, you don't belong here. I like, is this a glitch? Did it render a Lionel instead of a Bokoblin? What's going on?
Yeah. I'm like, I don't. I have people telling me all the time, like, start streaming that, man. Start streaming that, and I'm just like, oh, I don't know if I want to mess with this. I don't know if I'm going to have to. I think this weekend I might fire it back up. But my fear is I got so much I'm playing right now that I know it'll take my life over again. Because it totally shut my life down for like 2 weeks when I played it the first time. Like, I could not get enough of that game. And when the DLC pack hit, I went back in and I started to play the Master Trial or the Sword Trial, and I stopped to go complete the 120 shrines, and I started doing that all over again, and I got lost again for like another couple weeks, and I'm like, I put it down to go play some other stuff, and I'm like, I need to just play the other stuff and not go back until the final DLC, and then I'll start doing some crazy stuff. But I'm really excited for the final DLC. Like, what do you, because they haven't said much of what it is. They, do you think it's going to be a lot of content from previous to like pre-Ganon?
I remember there was an interview with Al Numa. I think it was GameSpot or maybe Game Informer that was talking to him, but they asked if there was going to be DLC for Breath of the Wild, and this was before it was announced. Al Numa said something that, as much as he loves the world that they've created for Breath of the Wild, he feels that there are certain areas that aren't what he would call complete. So I don't know what that means. There's a lot of people that say like the Hebra region feels empty. So my thought is, I took it as where he said he didn't feel like certain areas were complete. I feel that DLC would go back to those areas that already exist and flesh them out a bit more, as opposed to adding like a completely new region to the game. Which is what a lot of people thought. Like, there's going to be a huge island off in the distance. You sell there, that'll be the DLC. Because that's what, like, I think The Witcher 3 did that. Like, when the big DLC came, it was just another part of the map that unlocked. To where this, I think it'll be something like, at the very beginning of the game, you put your Sheikah Slate on the pedestal, and all the towers rise up out of the ground. Like, you would have never known they were there before until they rise up. I think it'll be something similar to where there's a new pedestal that just appears somewhere. You put your Sheikah Slate on it, and then in those unfinished regions, there's new temples or new whatever that comes out of the ground. A lot of people are talking about a 5th divine beast. So there's...
I would like to see, in terms of this game taking place, for me personally, because I felt like the one thing that upset me was when, man, this is kind of, I don't want to get to spoiler area here, so I gotta walk gingerly around this. I thought that when you beat the game, that you would be able to spend time with a Hyrule of the world after, like post Ganon. And I hope that's what this is. I hope it picks up from that final scene, and now you're starting to go off and you're doing, and as you go into the areas that you're saying that aren't developed, you're developing them. And as you're developing them, maybe you're unlocking more memories of, the champions from the time before and stuff. Like, that to me would be a lot of fun. Like, that's the part I would enjoy the most, I think. That if I could spend time in a Hyrule with no Ganon. Because that was kind of what I was hoping for. Like, but I understand why they didn't, because then where's the enemies coming from? Like, the enemies respawn because of the Blood Moon. But if you defeat Ganon, there is no Blood Moon anymore, and that's not going to happen. So I get that part of it, but it would have been kind of cool to
you could still get your wish. The Yiga clan still exists. They could, like, the Hylians or whatever are responsible for resurrecting Ganon in the Dark World or whatever. So it's like a member of the Yiga clan can be like, oh, well, there's no big bad guy here. Ganon's not here to take over the world, so maybe, like, in the same way, I forgot who it was. In A Link Between the Worlds, the big bad guy at the end was one of the people turned into a different version of Ganon. Maybe it could be something to where, like, one of the Yiga members turns into, like, a beast form, and then that's the new boss. That'd or cool. Something else happens.
I don't like talking to you because you actually start to make this a reality, and it's probably not going to happen. And now I'm wanting the game you're telling me, and it's not going to happen. I'm going to be disappointed.
There's a similar moment. I got sad. I was thinking of, I made a video on this. I was talking about what my perfect idea of DLC would be. Mm-hmm. And as being as vague as possible, when the game ends and you can see the sky and, like, the camera zooms out or whatever, not saying what it's showing or anything, but the camera zooms out like most Zelda games, and you can see the sky and it's all pretty and it shows everything's calmed down. In my head, if it picked up immediately after that, and then as soon as the sky was all clear and stuff, if it just started turning like a dark purple, and then, like, all of a sudden, in the same way in A Link to the Past, like, the Dark World had, like, a purple shade to it compared to Hyrule, if that happened. Like, you have Hyrule, but you also have the Dark World version of Hyrule, and then that's the DLC. But I think that would be too much for just DLC.
That's a lot. That's a lot for DLC. That's a different.
That would be like remaking the entire map.
Yeah, ultimately, because that was the cool thing about Link to the Past, was you get there and you do what you think and you're like, okay, the game's done. It's like, no. Now we're gonna throw you in an alternative world where it's totally different and everything's backwards and stuff. That was so ingenious how they did that. Okay, so real quick before we wrap up, what are you playing right now?
I have been playing a lot of Mario Cross Rabbids as just like a quick pick-me-up, and then I always dabble a little bit in Breath of the Wild still, so that's mostly what I've been playing.
What are you doing in Zelda?
Well, my YouTube channel is all about Zelda, so everything that I can do in the game is try to find a new piece of information, a clue as to the DLC, just random stuff.
I know you've seen, and I think you were kind of part of the whole thing too at some point, where you get the beasts to fight each other. Like if you get a guardian to fight like a Lionel, or to get them to come together. Have you ever like?
Oh no, I've never done any of that stuff. I've reported on it. And stuff,
that's what I meant. Like I know you reported on it.
But I think that's awesome that it's not just everyone against you. Like the Bokoblin, the giant Hinoxes will just pick up a Bokoblin and throw them at you, or like a Lionel will attack a Guardian. It's really cool. Like the AI in the game's smart. It's not just everyone versus you.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. It's funny because when you fight these things for the first time, even like a Hinox, that thing just gets up. I remember the first Hinox I found, like over on the Great Plateau. He's sleeping in the middle of the island, and there's a bridge that goes across from his island, and there's a shrine down below. And I paraglide down, and because everything kind of, the draw distance isn't super long, I'm paragliding in, and all of a sudden he starts to form, and I'm like, what is that? I don't want to be here, man. I was like, that was the theme of my time in Zelda was, I don't want to be here because I don't want to fight that thing, so I'm going the other way.
Yeah,
so
it's really cool how like you'll come across them and they'll just stand up, look at you, and then it's like you said, if you don't get too close or don't bother them, sometimes they won't bother you.
Yeah.
But it's like they have their territory, and it's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? You walking away? You walking away? Good.
Yeah. I'm not going to chase you too far. We're going to stay over here in this domain. Dude, them things are so funny, though. And I love the ones when you shoot them in the shins with a fire arrow, and their leg catches on fire. And it's like, okay, that buys me a couple of seconds. So the game is really, really good. I like it.
Yeah, there's a lot of really clever stuff that I don't think any other developer would think of. Like that, where like you can shoot them in the knee pads to burn off their knees, or if you're not wearing shoes and you kick a treasure chest, it'll like stub Link's toes and he'll jump up and down.
Yes. What more style are you a fan of? The 3D Zeldas or the top down?
I would say the 3D, just because there's a lot more that you can do with it. You can have like the different levels to where like there's the bottom and then there's the top, and then you can kind of see everything. It was really interesting because the 2D Zelda games that they have now, like A Link Between Worlds, they're technically 3D games, just the camera is fixed so that it looks 2D. You have full 3D character models, full 3D environments. It's just the camera angles top down, so it gives you like a 2.5D appearance. And I messed around with Breath of the Wild, where you can just put the camera to where it's face down, and it looks similar to a 2D game. And I imagine if they did a 2D game for the Switch, maybe that's what it would look like. So I'm a fan of the 3D.
Do you think the next Zelda we go back to 2D, or do you think it's going to be 3D?
The next one?
Yeah.
I think it'll definitely be 2D. I think it'll be something like A Link Between the Worlds, but instead of using the power of the 3DS, it'll be using the power of the Switch. I hope so. There was an interview where Aonuma said that for the next 2D Zelda game, he wants to evolve what you think of a 2D Zelda game. I have no idea what that means. So
well, I liked the Link Between Worlds. The one thing I didn't like though was the Rena-Center type thing.
Oh yeah.
Like you could get all the weapons from the get go. Like I was like, okay, that's fine. I'd rather go find them someplace. Like you don't have to put up in the dungeons. That was my problem with both Zeldas. It got boring where you go in and you're like, oh, I need a hook shot. Oh, I found a hook shot in this level. Like now I'm going to miraculously beat the level, and and then you go to the next one and you never would use the hook shot again for the rest of the game until the very end. And like that stuff, that's the only problem I ever had with Zelda. Like if you found a boomerang in a dungeon, the boomerang was the trick of the dungeon. And then if you found like a fire wand, that was the trick of the dungeon. And it was like, but you would never use those weapons again as you move forward. Like occasionally you would, but for the most part, you didn't use them again. I would like something where it's like you find these things out in the open, and then you got to figure out, I can't tackle that dungeon until I find the boomerang. But where the hell's the boomerang? I gotta go find it someplace. You get it, you go back. Not go into a guy and he just rents you everything, and then it's like when you die, you don't lose the weapon. You just pay a rental fee and you go back out again. That's probably my only. But I love that game because that like I said, Link to the Past is one of my favorite Zeldas. So going back to that world was just so inviting and so fun to get back into that. Jesse, man, thank you so much for coming on. This was a blast, man.
Thank you for the invite. I hope I didn't keep you too long. I know 30 minutes ago you said it was...
No, well, because I try to keep them an hour. You know what I mean? Because my guests, that's more or less. Like, this show is catered around the guests. Like, in my mind, I go, if I'm on a show, I don't want to spend more than an hour with the person because I might not like them. You know what I mean? Like, so not me personally. Like, I'm thinking in the mind of a guest. If I go on a show, I'm like, all right, I want to get out of here in an hour. I don't want to be here for 2-3 hours. I got stuff to do. So I always try to like keep it moving forward. But I'm good to go as long as the guests are. And if you weren't like, God, this guy's a pain in the butt. I gotta get out of here. So
No, as I said, I love talking about this stuff. There was one of my friends that lives close to where I live popped up in the chat earlier. Jean Kelly popped in. She's one of the only close friends that I have that I can talk to about Zelda, like in-depth nerdy conversations like you and I just had. So it's really cool whenever I'm able to like come on to a new podcast or a new YouTube channel and have that conversation, get everyone's opinions on the stuff that I enjoy. So,
well, I would love to get you back on. That's a definite, because I had a blast. Like I always say this, like there's typically what I do, and to pull the curtain behind from the wizard chair. But typically what I do is I have a list of questions on the side over here, and they're just backups in case I run out of stuff. And when I'm bringing someone on new that I've never talked to before, I refer back to that, because I'm like, I have to have this list, because I don't want to be sitting here like, so yeah, what's up with the wall behind you? You gonna paint that next week, or what's gonna, you know what I mean? Like I don't want to go, you know what I mean? Like that's my fear. But with you,
what's your favorite flavor milkshake?
Exactly. Like with you though, I didn't even get through all the questions, so that's good. So it's like that means this is a good conversation. If I blow through all the questions, I know I got problems. That means that the conversation didn't flow. That's why when you were like, hey man, I'm sorry if I'm going on to, what are you, nuts, dude? Keep talking, dude. I love it. Because that's what I am. Like I talk, people know, like when they get me going on the podcast, they're like, oh, we could be in for a long show here. Bobby likes to talk, so I'm good with that. That was fun. Real quick, before we leave, Bad Bitch just asked, what's your favorite Rabid in Mario Rabbids?
Oh, I like the Luigi Rabbid.
Okay, good.
No particular reason. Yeah. Daisy or the Princess Peach Rabbid, whatever, kind of freaks me out. The Mario Rabbid seems a bit too generic, so having the Luigi Rabbid is pretty good for me.
Luke, just for you, Ninmobile News. That'll make you happy.
Ninmobile News?
Yeah, I always talk about them on a lot of shows, and he always points out, like, here we go, this is the part of the show where he talks about Ninmobile News. But anyway, real quick, let everybody know where they can find you, where they can, see your stuff and all that. Real quick, give yourself a plug.
Yeah, everything, YouTube, Twitter, literally everything is /GameOverJesse. I made it easy. I was really lucky. One of the people that inspired me to make my channel was Game Over Greggy, or Greg Miller. Yes. Left IGN, started Kind of Funny. I somehow tricked him into coming on my YouTube channel when I first started.
Get out of here.
It was before he left IGN, like a month before he started Kind of Funny, so he wasn't quite as busy as he is now. And it was really, really great, because I get a lot of people that are like, oh, you just ripped off Game Over Greggy's name. And I'm like, well, here's a link to the episode where he said that how awesome he thought it was that he was able to inspire someone enough to start their own thing and even like use a different version of his own username.
That's funny. That's awesome. That's awesome. That's like it's a blessing. So that's good. It's not a bad thing. Again, thank you for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for the invite.
And everybody that was here to chat and all that. Thank you guys for showing up tonight, man. This doesn't happen without you guys, so I truly appreciate the fun and the love and all the great stuff. So
it was really awesome seeing RPG and Gene and some of the other people that are like crossovers between us. So it's really cool. We share a fan base.
That's awesome. That's what it's all about, man. And that's kind of fun too. Like you say, you see, like, hey, wait a minute, like I know that person. It's not just it's kind of cool to see that, like, hey, this isn't just some jerk on the internet. Like we have the same people. You know what I mean? It's kind of good. But so that is all, guys. Peace out, Preston.